welcome to the Metal Mixtape here on KSQ 89.5 FM Ashland, Oregon, 94.1 FM Medford, Oregon, stream online on kskq.org. It's the boy, it's the Don DJ Ramo. I am honored and excited to have Lisa, my on the show from Meanstreak. What is up, Lisa?
Just here having a good time.
Hell yeah. No, I have so many questions. Definitely we're going to talk about your the latest EP, Blood Moon, but also, you know, coming up next year, it's going to be the 40th year anniversary of when Meanstreak even formed, which is just absolutely insane, you know what I mean? And also just to be able to play music for that long without like losing your mind, you know what I mean? Because I know firsthand the music industry is just a lot. It's a lot going on, a lot of fun. It's always going really fast. And Lisa, you're such a phenomenal bass player, but since this is our first interview ever, before we jump into anything Meanstreak, I kind of want to jump into Lisa a little bit and talk about how like kind of like when you got your first spark in music, you know. So like I know when we were all younger, we either got like inspired by somebody handed us our first record, somebody took us to our first concert, maybe our parents were a huge inspiration to us musically, or we started on one path and ended up on another. Do you remember a specific moment in your life when you were younger that maybe like shifted your whole universe into jumping into this whole into just playing music and you know, liking rock and roll and metal and all that? Do you remember a specific time when you were younger where your life kind of shifted?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of them. I
Okay.
enjoyed music. I grew up in a house where the AM radio was always on because we didn't really have FM as much. So, you know, just AM radio long. Um, my mother liked music, but, you know, they weren't musicians or anything. Basically, I think I was probably about 7. I wanted a guitar, which I got for Christmas, and didn't know how to play as a 7-year-old. And my parents were like, well, I'm not going to give you lessons. Well, like, okay. So eventually I was like, well, I don't want to play if I don't know how to play. You know, you're a 7-year-old, you know, maybe if I was 12. So that went on. But when I was like 12 years old, I was hanging out with one of my friends and we were in the back seat of her older brother's car listening to the radio, and a Led Zeppelin song came on. I'm not sure what it was. I think it might have been Immigrant Song. I really don't remember because I barely knew them at that time. And I was like, ooh, what's that? What's that part? And my friend's brother, who was several years older than us, was like, yeah, that's the bass guitar. And I was like, the bass guitar? I'm like, ooh. And that was it. It just brain, and that was it. It was just this bizarre trigger and said, that's it. So that's how
Okay. So,
playing bass.
so
I had played viola in orchestra and hated it because I really wanted to play violin, you know, and didn't like the parts. It wasn't my thing, but you know, I knew what an upright bass was. I wasn't sure what a bass guitar was, and at that point, I figured it out. So
no,
just
that's incredible. Do you remember? Do you remember maybe? So now we know how you got kind of inspired to get start playing the bass guitar. But do you remember a moment that maybe inspired you to want to actually do it on stage? Because getting into music's one thing and playing it, but I feel like maybe like was there somebody in a band that like really inspired you that made me go like, man, like I want to do that someday? And also, do you remember the first time of you ever really getting on stage and having like your first big moment?
yeah, I mean, I listened to, you know, that was quite a while ago. So a lot of the stuff I listened to wasn't, you know, necessarily what's cool or popular. But I did have the Aerosmith live album, which was given to me by an older cousin. And that was a big thing at that point, you know, listening to that and hearing the live stuff. Um, I had another older friend who was very into Rush, and yes, she had turned me on to that. And we had gone to shows when I was very young. And I was like, ooh, you know, this is just fun and exciting. And I don't know, I just always like doing different things, you know, helping out with the plays at school and playing in orchestra.
Awesome.
So like, yeah, I don't know, something clicks in your brain. You're like, yeah, I just want to do this. The first show, I think that was probably my band. I mean, we played in front of people, but our first show was the band before Meanstreak. I played with a bunch of other local girls, and we had done a show at one of those clubs where you had to sell your own tickets, and you're lucky if you got
Yeah.
10 people in the club, and have some pretty funny pictures from that. And it was pretty exciting. We did good and we had fun, and I think we did one other show, and then that was it with the band. It just didn't work out. And then with Meanstreak, wasn't in the band very long, in our first 3 or 4 months, and we did our first show. We opened up for some of our friends' band, and that was a pretty big deal for us. And that was it. And we did
Oh
good.
yeah.
That was
No,
exciting.
do you okay, how about this before we get into the next section of the interview? Do you remember your first big show that kind of blew you away, where like you kind of like took a step back and was like, all right, like Lisa, like this is like one of those big moments that you really dreamed of, and you got to go out. I mean, I'm sure the adrenaline kicked in when you went on stage, but do you remember like your first big show that like really meant a lot to you, where it almost like solidified like your career or up to that point in your life?
Oh, well, we had played out for quite a while, just opening in the regular clubs and done some headlining shows. And one of the biggest things that we've talked about is we got offered show opening for Anthrax at Lemoore in Brooklyn, which was, the rock capital at the time. And that was a biggie. And our drummer just didn't feel comfortable doing it. And we really felt it was a make or break thing. We did not want to turn it down, being it was offered to us. That would have been, a really big, but Lemoore probably wouldn't have had us back. And, Anthrax, it would have been a whole big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the drummer decided not to do it. So we said, we're going to have somebody fill in then, and you take it from here. And we wound up, luckily, I had Yael's number. She had played with another band that we had played with, and she was, so cool. And I said, you know what, just in case. I ran into her one night, said, let me get her number just in case something happens. And we said, we're going to be opening for Anthrax. Would you like to do it? You have 3 days to learn the set.
Oh man.
Mind you, she was still quite young at the time. I don't know if she was 17 or 18, or, we showed up where she was working at the pizza place with a cassette and said, here you go. And we practiced, I think, twice and did the show. And that was huge, because not only was it a big show opening for Anthrax, but we had a drummer who we really did not know and only played with us
Oh
twice.
man.
Well, it was all our music. And
Woo!
I think everything we probably played quite a bit faster than it normally would be. So it didn't matter if we made mistakes, nobody would have known. But I think we went over well, and that was huge. That was a biggie, because not only was it a big show, but here we're playing with a drummer we didn't even know, because we really, really, felt that it would have been detrimental if we didn't do the show. So that was a biggie. That was definitely the other biggie, I would say, was we played with Man of War and Motorhead in the
Love
city
it.
at the and everybody was just so nice. We really didn't get to talk to Motorhead, but Man of War were just so nice to us. They let us even have their dressing room. They were just incredible, which was just wonderful, because it was a place we played at the Ritz a lot. So that was probably the two big ones.
Did Man of War stay in costume when they said hi to you guys?
I don't know if we even saw them. Oh, I mean, the only time I've ever we played, did we play? No, I think that was the only time we played with them. But the only time I ever met any of those guys was when they opened for Maiden. I don't know. I think it was in New Jersey. We got to meet them after the show, and everybody'd been partying a lot, so they probably wouldn't even remember or know who we were at the time.
That's that's awesome. No, those are great. I feel like a lot of these little moments are what shapes us. You know what I mean?
Oh
And
yeah.
oh yeah, no, that's my favorite thing in the whole world. And I also just love hearing stories about like bands back when they were younger, and just I feel like that whole era was just kind of like how like movies were, where it was like there's so much originality coming out of nowhere. And also I feel like back in the day, like rock and roll and like metal and everything had like so much more attitude. Like nowadays it's just it's I love how music is now, but it's such a huge bowl of just genres and music constantly getting shifted left and right, and it's almost a little overwhelming. I remember hearing stories about like concerts back in like the 80s, where like you used to see a flyer and you didn't even know how the band looked like until you got there. And
Mhm.
now if you want to go see a band, you can go see what they made for breakfast on Instagram before you even saw what their show is.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we had all the local papers back then. I guess they still have, but people don't rely on them. You know, for us, it was the Aquarian Weekly. They had Good Times on Long Island in New York, and you'd pick it up free. You know, music stores, you know, you'd find it anywhere, and you'd go through there and it'd have all the clubs and everybody was playing for the month. And that was a big way to find out, or you heard it on the radio. But if they were smaller bands, you know, you had to go look, or you would just go to the club or see on their marquee outside who was playing. All the clubs had their own flyers. I have a bunch of those you take home and have like the list of everybody who would be playing. So
That's awesome.
just a big difference, you know.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So you playing in Meanstreak, you've been in this band for quite a while now. Like, what do you think is important to keep a band like together, and what do you think is a good thing to do, like to keep a band healthy? Because I know now I see a lot of local bands break up. They maybe last 3 or 5 years. Somebody gets an ego and breaks up, but I feel a lot of times if everybody sticks together, it could just create like some really special force if you're able to get a group of individuals in your band, because everybody in your band is just absolutely talented. What do you think is a recipe for keeping a band healthy?
Oh, well, don't lie, be yourself, be open. For us, you know, we played so much, you know, back in the day, you know, back in the 80s and the early 90s. And for us, it got to the point where we were all getting older. A couple of us got married and, you know, we just stopped being a band and started families. For myself, I hadn't played in 30 years. I stopped playing at one point, you know, having kids and everything. My joke is the only time I touched a bass was to pick one up and move it out of my way. But, you know, we wound up we weren't together the whole time. So we're together as, you know, the three of us, Marlene, Raina, and myself, of course, we're all connected for a very long time. So, you know, we're all around. Um, but during COVID, we decided, you know, maybe it's time, let's get things back together. You know, our kids are all old enough, they can take care of themselves and, you know, we still love it. So yeah, that was a biggie, you know, playing, you know, learning how to play again and getting through it and all that. But, you know, once we were back together, it was like the old days, you know, because we knew each other so well. It's family.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah.
it's just,
It's no. I was just gonna say it's definitely interesting, just like going through the times and just like how everybody's changed. Like I'm about I've been playing with the same guitar player for the last 10 years, and when I first met him in our first band, it was like we're such different people now,
mhm.
and oh yeah, like I used to think I was like the crazy one partying guy. Now I'm like the most settled down dad out of everybody I know. It's quite interesting. But Meanstreak still absolutely you guys are still absolutely badass. I listened to Blood Moon like 3 times. I listened to it twice yesterday, once while my son was trying to climb on my back, and then once in the car, and then once this morning. I love it. It's incredibly well produced, incredibly well recorded. It's beautiful, heart pounding. It's dark. Great bass tone, great everything recorded. Everything really pops up. I listened to it at home through my JBL system, and you could really hear everything. You were talking about how you had your break during COVID. Like, did you have to like almost re-inspire did everybody in the band like kind of re-inspire themselves to write Blood Moon and start writing new music again? Or was it like, because you were talking about how like you relearned how to play and everything, like what was the relearning process to writing like Blood Moon and just everybody getting their juices flowing again?
Well, technically, all four songs are songs that were written way before that. These are
Oh,
songs,
okay. Oh,
demos.
okay.
We had done demos back in the past and had nothing ever wound up coming of it.
Mm,
And the one demo even came out, but they were all songs that had already been written and nothing had been done with really. So for
okay.
us, learning, you know, our old songs off of Roadkill and learning those songs.
Mhm.
I knew half of the songs on the EP. Two of the songs I wasn't part of the band at the point that time when they were written. So those were two new songs for me, which was kind of cool. So it's basically just, you know, relearning all of our old stuff, which was definitely a lot easier than learning somebody else's stuff. So just really worked on that and, retweaked everything a little bit and changed things, a little bit to modernize it, especially with our sounds, because everything is different. Our equipment's different than it was back then. So it
Oh
was
yeah.
nice to really record it rather than it just being a basic demo and do something with them. So
Uh, yeah, no, that's badass. No, it actually it turned out super awesome. I think I wrote down Rubberneck was definitely my favorite song on this album. It feels the fastest. All these songs are great. The Dark Gift, Oh Father, Giant Speaks, like it's all super badass. But it's just and that's why I like talking about like how you came back to it instead of just jumping into the album, because it's like I would have never known that, like, everybody stopped for that long. Everybody had that break during COVID. So it's like it's awesome. Now there's so much more volume behind.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's kind of it's weird because some of us still did play. Our drummer Yael has played with a zillion people and done tours, and Raina has played with a ton of people. She played with Judas Priestess for like 8 years and kept doing things. Our singer, I'm sure she's did plenty of things on the side. She sings all kinds of music. It was myself basically and Marlene Portnoy. The two of us were the two who really hadn't played. We were just busy doing family stuff, and you get involved. We still love music, so half of us were still in, together, and half of us weren't. So
Oh yeah. No, no, that's awesome. And also that's awesome that like with your band too, it's like you have like the family connection and all that, everybody being super close. So it's just super awesome because there's just so much music going on. It's like it never stops.
yeah,
No,
you know,
I like it. I like it.
yep,
I like it. So let's see how much time we got left. All right, we got like five minutes up. All right. Before we end the interview, can I ask you a bunch of fun and out of the sorts questions?
sure.
All right. What is your favorite artist that you listen to that is furthest away from the music you play in Meanstreak?
Oh, furthest away? Oh, I don't
But
know
like
about.
just completely different style.
One of my favorite bands is Linkin Park. They're definitely, not as
Oh, I love
heavy.
Linkin Park.
Love Linkin Park. Oh gosh. Trying to, that's probably one of the things. I listen to so many different things, but not necessarily all the time. I mean, I was gonna say, I was gonna say the Jelly Jam, the husband side project, which is definitely, nowhere near, met, they're a little progressive, but still Jelly Jam stuff is great. But I don't know. I guess pretty much Linkin Park so much, or things that, well, now that I see them, Gravity Kills, but they're kind of more industrial, but I'm seeing them on a lot of festivals all of a sudden. There were a lot of industrial type bands I used to listen to.
Okay. I love it.
Um,
I love it. Okay, this is kind of a question just from like your perspective I want to ask. And this is about just a small Dream Theater question. It's basically how what was your husband's reaction when they knew that they were going to get Mike Portnoy back in the Dream Theater?
oh, I mean, it was just one of those things that all of a sudden it was the right time and happened and was like, all right, let's give it a try, see how this goes. And once they were together for, I don't know, a day or whatever, it was like things were the way they always were. We've
Uh,
all matured, but they've known each other since they were, first year of college, and John knew each other, all through school. So for them, as far as I know, it was just, like time, never passed. It was like, the whole thing all over again, you're back together. So
cool. I love that. I love that. Yeah, because I know the whole metal community was kind of shook by that. So I was and Mr. Mangini is a super awesome drummer too and a hell of a guy. I remember watching the video of because they did the tryouts. They did
okay.
like the documentary thing, tryouts for Dream Theater, and Mangini was just like such a nice guy, and he does that weird snap thing where he hits the cymbals from the ceiling kind of thing. So yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know him
That
super
what was
well,
that?
but I don't know him super, super well. I've only met him so many times, but he seemed very, very nice.
Oh,
The time,
cool.
there's only so much time.
No, absolutely, absolutely. What is one thing you're great at besides playing the bass?
One thing I'm great at, make you laugh, carving a turkey. That's always, I carve a turkey, it's like Martha Stewart. I don't know, photography, I would say that's my thing, you know, taking pictures. I'm really big, you know, I did go to school, you know, for like a year or two for photography billion years ago, and I love taking pictures. But yeah, that's my other big thing. Sometimes
I
I'm
like.
more into, but
All right. Last question. For you, what do you think the biggest difference is between rock and roll and metal now than it was in the 80s?
oh wow. I think there's less guitar leads. There's a lot more um, different types of vocals. You know, you had heavy vocals like growling back then, but you didn't have as many bands as now. There's like a ton of them, and there's a lot of crossover, like you were saying, like you know, kind of blends of music, which I'm fine with. I like you know wide variety of all of it, and seeing more and more the different variety. You know, you seeing them in festivals, the different bands they're putting together, and you know things are just melding a little bit, but you know things progressively change a little bit and then they come back and they modernize. It's just one of those things. So
Absolutely. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being on my show, for being on the Metal Mixtape. I hope everybody listening go checks out Meanstreak and their latest EP, Blood Moon. Before I let you go, can you say this is Lisa Myung from Meanstreak, and you are listening to the Metal Mixtape?
gonna write down real quick. Hi, you're listening to Lisa Myung of Meanstreak, and you're listening to the Metal Mixtape.
Rock and roll, Lisa. Have a beautiful day with your family. Have a beautiful day playing music with your band, and thank you so much for blessing me with your time today.
Thank you so much.
You have a beautiful day, okay?
You too. Thank you.